flare up in Hong Kong despite an imposing police presence as politicians debate deeply controversial laws. No one can use the courts to evade justice. Israel's president speaks out in the Malka Leifer case. Hungry and exhausted, how a pair of hikers survived a 19-day ordeal lost in the bush. And a new era in space exploration, the first commercial flight to send astronauts into space just hours away.
This is SBS World News with Darren Mara.
Good evening. In Hong Kong, riot police have made hundreds of arrests and fired pepper ball rounds at protesters who fear political freedoms are under threat. The crowds surrounded the territory's Legislative Council, where a bill is being debated that would make it illegal to disrespect the Chinese national anthem. The protests come a day ahead of a vote in China that will impose national security laws on Hong Kong.
A warning shot as now familiar tension returned to Hong Kong's streets. Angry locals made their presence felt in the face of hundreds of riot police. At least 240 people were arrested and marched onto waiting buses.
I think that this is not what we could see in an open society, because it make the things more like a police state.
As tempers flared outside, the controversial national anthem law was discussed inside. The laws, if passed, will govern the use of the Chinese national anthem and include provisions to punish anyone who insults it with up to 3 years in jail. The security laws will be voted on in the National People's Congress tomorrow afternoon and are widely seen as both a reaction to the violent protests last year and an attempt to exert more control over the territory despite the principle of one country, two systems.
People understand that if the law is implemented, they will be likely to be prosecuted, detained, and even go to jail for speaking critically of the Hong Kong government, for speaking critically of the Chinese Communist Party.
Pro-Beijing former Hong Kong security chief Regina Ip-Lau Suk-Ye told Chinese state television she believes the central government has no choice but to impose the legislation.
Events of the past year clearly show that there are terrorist activities in Hong Kong and there are separatist activities in Hong Kong which need to be dealt with.
The laws are said to further complicate the relationship between Washington and Beijing. US President Donald Trump hinting at sanctions if the legislation is passed.
It's something you're going to be hearing about before the end of the week, very powerfully, I think.
香港特区维护国家安全立法问题纯属中国内政，不容任何外来干涉。对于外部势力干预香港事务的错误行径，我们将采取必要措施，予以反制。
Taiwan's president renewing her offer to help any pro-democracy protesters, promising the opportunity for them to stay, live and work in Taiwan. A move that's likely to further anger China. State media is reporting President Xi Jinping has ordered a step up in its military preparedness as China's relationship with its neighbours and the West deteriorates. Lucy Murray, SBS World News.
Well, let's cross live now to CNN correspondent Ivan Watson, who's in Hong Kong. Ivan, what is the latest situation there and what can we expect tomorrow?
Well, the enormous police presence is still out on the streets. The police say that they arrested more than 300 people today, charging them with things like unlawful assembly and possession of weapons. The law about criminalizing mocking the national anthem, that's been postponed for a week. And it's really been overshadowed, I think, by this national security law that is currently being drafted in Beijing that has people really worried here, from the activist and dissident out on the street to the international business presence here, where you have groups like the American Chamber of Commerce saying that they're really worried about what this means for the future of this territory. I just had an exclusive interview with the second highest ranked official in Hong Kong, Matthew Chung. He's the first secretary behind all the rows of police barricades and everything. And he was trying to reassure business circles that the new law would only affect a tiny fraction of Hong Kong, the tiny group of people that he describes as terrorists and people who are treasonous and separatists calling for Hong Kong's independence. But when I tried to press him on points, can you get dragged from Hong Kong to mainland China to be prosecuted in Chinese courts? Can you be arrested retroactively for things that you may have posted on the internet a year or two ago? Would foreign-born judges not be allowed to rule on matters of national security here in Hong Kong? Because there are a lot of foreign dual citizen judges here. He couldn't answer any of those questions, saying wait till the law is drafted, which suggests that the second most powerful person here in Hong Kong, in its administration, has no say in the drafting of this very controversial piece of legislation. Darren.
OK, thank you for that update there. That's Ivan Watson in Hong Kong. 2 New Zealand hikers missing for more than 19 days in a national park have been found alive. There were emotional scenes when Jessica O'Connor and Dion Reynolds reunited with loved ones after being rescued. They'd ventured into Kahurangi National Park in the northwest of the South Island on May 9 for a 5-day hike. They were reported missing 9 days later. A rescue helicopter located the pair this afternoon when searchers spotted smoke from a fire. They were hungry and exhausted, but after a hospital check, they were allowed to go home. Israel's President Reuven Rivlin has tonight spoken with Australia's Prime Minister, assuring him that no one can use the courts to evade justice. It follows a ruling by an Israeli court that ex-principal Malka Leifer is mentally fit to face an extradition hearing on sex abuse charges. Mr Morrison told the President it is a welcome development in the extradition process. Her accusers in Melbourne are also relieved, but her lawyers say they will appeal.
6 years and 67 court hearings. Sisters Darcy Ehrlich, Nicole Meyer and Ali Sapper today claim a victory in their fight to have their alleged abuser face charges.
For so long, it felt like she was getting away with it. This process has really bruised us, but it has not broken us.
Malka Leifer is wanted by Victorian police on 74 sexual assault charges related to her time as principal of Melbourne's ultra-Orthodox Adas Israel School. It's alleged she left Australia for Israel in 2008 after accusations against her surfist.
So it's a huge decision, but we need to all be sober about it. There's a long, long way to go.
Australia requested her extradition in 2014. The case repeatedly delayed, with her lawyers arguing Ms Leifer suffers from clinical depression.
Suffering with the effects of the abuse ourselves, to just keep hearing about her mental wellness and how she's not able to stand trial was very, very difficult.
She's been examined by mental health experts over 30 times in the last 5 years. Jerusalem's district court ruling Ms Leifer has been feigning mental incompetence to evade extradition to Australia.
This decision today has removed an obstacle that has prevented the court from moving forward in this matter.
Ms Leifer's lawyer immediately flagging an appeal.
אנחנו מתכוונים לערער הן על ההחלטה של ההסגרה והן ההחלטה על מצב הנפשי.
Australia has pressed Israel to expedite Ms Leifer's case, ongoing delays straining relations between the two countries.
It has taken a very long time, a frustratingly long time, to get to this point, but we do not control, nor do we advise into the Israeli justice system.
An appeal will take the case to Jerusalem's High Court. If it upholds the ruling that Malka Leifer is fit to face trial, an extradition hearing will begin in Israel on the 20th of July. Her accusers now optimistic that Ms Leifer will face charges in Melbourne by the end of the year.
I hope that this moment will show all those survivors across the world that they too have a voice and give them the encouragement to speak out.
Ms Leifer is remanded in an Israeli jail as the marathon of legal proceedings continues. Abby Dinham, SBS World News.
Queensland health authorities say they've not been able to establish any link between a nurse who had contracted COVID-19 and a 30-year-old man who has died in the town of Blackwater. He has been identified as minor Nathan Turner. He becomes Australia's youngest virus victim. It is known that the nurse travelled there from Rockhampton, but Queensland Health says she did not interact with anyone there. The death of Mr Turner takes the national toll to 103. 11 new cases have been confirmed. In Western Australia, health officials are trying to contain an outbreak on a live export ship docked in Fremantle.
A team of health experts and contact tracers swiftly deployed to the Queensland mining town of Blackwater.
Late yesterday afternoon, the Queensland Ambulance Service was called to a home in Blackwater. There they found a man who was deceased. He was later tested for COVID-19 and that test was positive.
Questions now over how the 30-year-old miner contracted the infection. He had not worked since November and had not left the small town since February.
Blackwater has never had a case of COVID before. Contact tracing is extensively underway.
Authorities say the man had been sick for weeks and had underlying health conditions. Residents of Blackwater with flu-like symptoms are being urged to get tested immediately. Health officials on the other side of the country also scrambling as they try to contain a cluster on board a live export vessel where 6 crew members have tested positive. The finger-pointing continues. The West Australian Premier initially claimed his government was never told there was sick crew on board when the ship docked. But an email released by the Federal Agriculture Minister suggests otherwise.
We undertook the protocol set out by the WA government to notify them through this email address.
Clearly yesterday I did not have the information that I have now.
The ship departed the United Arab Emirates for Perth on May 7. The government this morning laying out its timeline of what happened in the 3 weeks since. It says 1 week ago the Federal Agricultural Department was told 3 crew members were ill but did not have symptoms of COVID-19. 2 days later, the ship docked just 1 hour after notifying the department a person on board now had symptoms. The department says it emailed the West Australian Virus Emergency Centre and a state health official was included in the correspondence. 2 days later, Border Force also became concerned and sent an email. The next day, officials began onboard testing. Yesterday, Premier Mark McGowan was told 6 crew members had tested positive. The Premier taking a swipe at how the information was communicated.
We need to have better and more comprehensive communications with the Commonwealth than just an email.
The Maritime Union of Australia says the incident highlights a flawed regulatory system that not only threatens the safety of the community, but also Australia's supply chains. A pilot had boarded the Al Kuwait to bring it into harbour, and he's now in quarantine.
There's very few pilots in each port. If this had gone through, and potentially it may have, through other pilots, you shut down the port of Fremantle.
The union adding the lessons from the Ruby Princess are yet to be learned.
Cruise ships, they remain banned from Australian waters, so this is quite materially different from the Ruby Princess.
The 6 infected crew members are in quarantine in a Perth hotel. The remaining 42 are still on the ship. Abby O'Brien, SBS World News.
US President Donald Trump has threatened to regulate or shut down social media companies after 2 of his tweets were labelled as potentially misleading. Twitter has marked 2 of the president's tweets with an alert suggesting readers check the facts. The president hit back in another tweet. He said Republicans feel that social media platforms totally silence conservative voices. We will strongly regulate or close them down before we can ever allow this to happen. Coming up after the break, a nation mourns for thousands of lives lost as the latest assessment of the coronavirus infection rate remains grim.
Throughout this investigation, Hitler has always left a trail. In the last 70 years, no one has ever been this close to discovering the truth about Hitler.
Hunting Hitler, the final season. Starts Sunday 7:40 on SBS Viceland and on demand.
The heroes
I remember looking at the horses
we take for granted.
and saying sorry.
Vets.
Grief and loss. We have to be a pillar for people.
You're just in it for the money. You don't care about animals.
On Dateline, China's other big health issue, obesity. From traditional remedies to brutal boot camps, are they winning the battle of the bulge? Insight and Dateline, now streaming on SBS On Demand.
We're ready to get back out there again. As we do, it's up to all of us to stay COVID safe. Anytime you leave your house, wash your hands regularly. Keep physical distance where you can. Have the COVID Safe app on your phone. And importantly, if you're feeling sick, you need to stay at home and get tested. Together, we can reduce the risk of a second wave. Stay COVID-free and do the 3.
Authorised by the Chief Medical Officer, Canberra.
Come on, everyone!
Donate some of your data to kids who need it most and power their potential.
The 100% electric Nissan Leaf redefines driving. With the most advanced Nissan Intelligent Mobility of any vehicle, it's the first to feature e-pedal. Brake, accelerate and stop. One pedal. No wonder Leaf is the world's best-selling electric vehicle ever. The new Nissan Leaf. Simply amazing.
Cameron Daddo discovers family connections beyond anything he could imagine.
Brings up such deep emotion. Travel safely. Thanks. Come home with a full story for me, won't you?
Who do you think you are? Tuesday 7:30 on SBS and on demand.
Do I need to introduce myself? Just how dangerous is it? You don't understand. Can't stop what's coming.
If you want to question my morals, do it later.
Call it.
Modern Westerns continues with Jane Got a Gun, tomorrow 9:30 on SBS World Movies and On Demand.
Flags across Spain are being flown at half-mast as the country begins 10 days of mourning to honour its COVID-19 victims. Spain's royal family were among those who wore black and observed a moment's silence to pay tribute to the more than 27,000 lives lost, the 5th highest death toll worldwide. The mourning period is the longest in Spain's democratic history. The World Health Organization has again played down hopes for a speedy global rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic, saying the world is still in a phase where the disease infection rate is on the way up. Globally, there have been over 5.5 million confirmed cases of the disease and over 350,000 deaths. More than 2 million people have recovered. The European Union has revealed a €750 billion stimulus package to help stave off an unprecedented economic crisis, with Italy set to receive the lion's share of the recovery fund. The country has seen its lowest daily coronavirus death toll since early March and is now taking cautious steps towards reopening its vital tourism industry.
The ancient Roman city of Pompeii was buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Its unearthed ruins are now ready to rise again, 2.5 months after the site was shut under Italy's COVID-19 lockdown. On day one of reopening, there were few visitors, but plenty of enthusiasm.
It's going to be fabulous. And we've already experienced the Amalfi Coast with no traffic and no people. And, you know, we just feel like they've saved it for us. And now we get to do the ruins the same way.
Guests will have to wear masks and practice social distancing, and numbers will be limited. It's been dubbed low-dose tourism.
Il percorso appunto dicevo offre molti spazi, quindi c'è tanta sicurezza, naturalmente cercheremo di evitare grossi gruppi perché insomma c'è un limite di 10.
Italy's tourism sector will take an enormous hit this summer. It accounts for roughly 13% of the country's GDP. Even nations that didn't institute strict lockdowns are experiencing a substantial economic shock. Sweden's relatively soft approach to coronavirus attracted global attention. Large gatherings were banned, but restaurants and bars remained open. Yet more than 76,000 Swedes have lost their jobs since March. Unemployment is at a 5-year high.
It is a myth that life goes on as normal in Sweden. There is no full lockdown of Sweden, but many parts of the Swedish society have shut down. Many Swedes are severely affected.
Last week, Sweden had Europe's highest per capita mortality rate. Britain's official death toll has passed 37,000 as new polls show a substantial drop in Boris Johnson's personal popularity following revelations his chief advisor drove his family cross-country during lockdown. Dominic Cummings has refused to stand down, the Prime Minister hasn't sacked him, and public anger over apparent double standards hasn't abated.
Will the government review all penalty fines imposed on families travelling for childcare purposes during lockdown?
That's a very good question. I think, especially coming from a man of the cloth, I think that is perfectly reasonable to take away that question. I'll have to talk to my Treasury colleagues before I can answer it in full.
Downing Street's desperate to draw a line under this saga. That hasn't happened yet. In London, Ben Lewis, SBS World News.
Well, in just a few hours' time, the first commercial passenger space flight will blast off from Florida. The NASA mission using a SpaceX rocket also marks the first crewed flight from American soil in almost a decade and will dock at the International Space Station. It has special meaning for astronaut Doug Hurley, who piloted the Atlantis on the final space shuttle mission back in 2011.
You would have never thought, after we landed Atlantis back in 2011 that, 9 years later we would be where we are in some ways, and it's better than I would have imagined in so many.
The launch will be attended by President Donald Trump. Liftoff is scheduled for just after 6:30 Australian Eastern Time tomorrow morning. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the opening of a trans-Tasman travel bubble won't be far away, with a dedicated group of experts set to deliver a preliminary blueprint within a week. Ms Ardern wouldn't give an exact date for travel time to resume, but tourism authorities have previously targeted the 1st of July. The Trans-Tasman Safe Border Group has analysed aspects including pre-flight health requirements, on-board protections and contact tracing for travellers.
I can confirm there is enthusiasm on both sides of the Tasman for this proposal to proceed as soon as it is safe to do so. We both know neither country wants to see cases imported from the other.
Exactly which Australian states will open for flights to and from New Zealand remains unclear. Australia's Big Four banks have seen a stunning reversal of fortune on the share market, adding $31 billion in value over the last 2 days. They're basically playing catch-up because the banks have missed out on the recent rally the broader market has experienced. Well, today, shares in ANZ and Westpac surged 8%. The others also did quite nicely. Still, the sector has a long way to recover the losses seen in recent months, down around 34% since the peak. Today's performance was also aided by an upbeat broker report on the sector and an oversubscribed NAB share purchase plan. Let's check the finance figures, and the Australian share market finished weaker, with the 200 down 0.1%. The sector reallocation that saw financials push higher meant weakness in resource stocks and the health space. Markets in Europe are stronger in early deals, and $1 Australian dollar is buying a little over 66.5 US cents. That's a 3-month high, returning to pre-COVID-19 levels. Coming up next, the weather, and this singing centenarian reveals her secret to a long life lived in perfect harmony.
Uncover how this mega settlement became the mega city we know today.
We'll reveal the crucial events that changed the very size of London.
London, 2,000 years of history. Sunday, 7:30 on SBS and On Demand.
Saturday night, 2 of Australia's best cooks are inviting you into their kitchens.
That's it. We're ready to cook. Andiamo.
At 7:30, Sylvia Colica shares the flavours of her homeland.
This is a showstopper. It's a wow dish.
Then at 8, Poe shows there's nothing better than a home-cooked meal.
That's really good.
Cook like an Italian with Sylvia Colica and Poe & Co. Start Saturday from 7:30 on SBS Food and On Demand.
I suddenly realised we're all in this together.
That feels especially true, given what's going on. It is good to know that our super will help us and our economy bounce back. And if you're with one of these, your super is invested in things that create jobs and keep Aussie businesses strong, delivering good long-term returns that benefit all of us. After all,
We're all in this together.
As Australia moves to the NBN, now is the time to join an award-winning provider with service and performance that's out of this world. Turn to TPG. Get unlimited data with phone line for $59.99 a month. With more than 1.8 million broadband customers, our group is the second largest internet provider in Australia, connecting you to the internet.
tpg.com.au. Harvey Norman has everything you need for your home. Come into our spacious stores for the best of Australian-made. Choose Australian-made timber and fabric beds and customise the fabric, colour and timber stain to suit your home. Our range features the best names in Australian-made mattresses and ensembles. Sealy, Sleepmaker, Beauty Rest, King Coil and Body Balance. Complete your sleep experience with beautiful Australian-made Manchester. Support local manufacturers and choose Australian-made. Everything you need for your home. Browse online and shop in-store. Now at Harvey Norman.
Go! I would really like to know where my husband has gone.
We are just trying to connect our victims to our killer.
Please let me have Robert back.
Please don't leave me here! This is not somebody who wants to negotiate. Somebody who wants people hurt.
One thing that's been really weird is every time I sing along to music, and I'm listening to a lot more at home alone, I start crying inexplicably for some songs. Just super heightened emotionally.
To the weather now. In the major centres, mostly sunny in Sydney, partly cloudy for Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane and Hobart. Possible late storms for Perth, fine in Darwin. Further afield, cloudy for Auckland and Christchurch, showers for Samoa, Nadi and Tahiti. In Southeast Asia, thunderstorms for Bangkok and Kuala Lumpur, partly cloudy in Jakarta. Further north, clear skies for Beijing, showers for Hanoi, heavier downfalls for Taipei. Heading west now, fine in Jerusalem and Tehran, partly cloudy in Mumbai, thunderstorms for Delhi. To Europe, showers for Rome and Moscow, partly cloudy in Berlin, all clear in Paris. In Africa, partly cloudy in Addis Ababa, a few showers in Algiers, thunderstorms in Lagos. South America, fine in Rio, partly cloudy in Buenos Aires, thunder for Panama City. And lastly for North America, showers for New York and Havana, partly cloudy in Vancouver. The coronavirus pandemic has prevented many people from celebrating milestone birthdays, but the restrictions couldn't stop the party for one Sydney woman who marked her 100th birthday by breaking into song.
This is Philomena Gouveia. Today she turns 100. She's a singing centenarian. Philomena likes to belt out a tune or two, always has. Even more so on her special milestone occasion.
I reckon that's what's made her live long, is laughter and singing. She just sings heaps of stuff from her country, and some things I don't know and it doesn't make sense to me, but she enjoys it.
Philomena's life started in Porto Santo in 1920. She's the only person on record from the Portuguese island in the North Atlantic to reach 100 years.
She said that everything is beautiful and that we wanted to do it for her.
After losing her husband and then migrating to Australia in the early 1970s, Philomena has refused to check into a nursing home. Instead, she chooses to live with her immediate family and reflect on a long life lived.
Yeah, she's saying that this is her son, when he was little, and that he passed away. Happy birthday to you.
The mandatory message from the Queen has arrived, and to mark the 100th birthday, a huge party was planned today. Philomena was hoping to kick up her heels, let her hair down. But the COVID-19 restrictions put a stop to a slap-up celebration.
My grandmother loves parties. We've done our best.
Philomena has been in and out of hospital for the past decade because of illness. But as long as she can reach the required notes, there's no stopping the singing centenarian. Mike Tomalaris, SBS World News.
Happy birthday, Philomena. Well, a Chinese survey team has become the first group to climb Mount Everest this year. The 53-member team is tasked with remeasuring the exact height of the world's tallest mountain. Their ascent comes after the cancellation of the spring climbing season to prevent the coronavirus from spreading among expedition teams. That is the world this Wednesday. The SBS News website has all the latest stories. You can get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. From the team, I'm Darren Mara. Good night.